My name is Susan Robinette. I'm 31 years old. That morning, at exactly 8:14 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. The words were neat, precise, and entirely devoid of warmth. We changed all the locks and the gate code. We no longer trust you. It landed like a corporate termination email, but instead of a job, it was my role as a daughter that had been revoked. I stared at it, bathed in that pale morning light that turns everything oddly sterile. And honestly, I wasn't shocked. Love hadn't lived in our house for years. Only obligations, silent debts disguised as favors, and a recurring tab that always ended up with me paying. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed what felt like the first decision I'd made entirely for myself in years. Very clever, but you forgot one thing. I didn't wait for a reply. I opened my banking app, navigated to the scheduled payments, and canceled the automatic transfer. $4,800 due on the 15th of every month. Money I'd been sending for a house I didn't live in, and apparently wasn't welcome to enter anymore. The confirmation popped up. Canceled. A tiny word for something so heavy. The silence that followed was strange, not peaceful, empty, like the calm after a storm siren shuts off. I set my phone down and listened to my apartment breathe. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a dog barked at nothing. I made coffee and tried to memorize the sound of it dripping. It sounds silly, but that was what I wanted to remember about my life. Not group chat notifications, not the ringtone I'd trained myself to answer on the first buzz. For 4 years, I had been my family's invisible sponsor. I paid their mortgage like a sacred ritual no one acknowledged. I covered roof repairs after storms, kept the internet on so my dad could stream games and my sister's kids could watch cartoons. I even paid property taxes when my mom felt overwhelmed. Every time I told myself it was temporary, and every time temporary stretched. The first crack appeared on Facebook. I was curbside, waiting for grocery pickup, when the algorithm dared me with a photo, my parents, my older sister Lindsay, smiling in front of the very house I'd been paying for. The caption read, "So proud of our daughter for building a future we can all share. This home is in the right hands." A home sweet home sign dangled from my mother's hand, a gift from Lindsay. I reread it over and over, silently hoping the words would rearrange themselves to include me. No tag, no acknowledgement of my years of effort, just emojis, claps, and praise for Lindsay. Somewhere nearby, a cart squeaked. People walked past. I sat frozen, pinned to that photo like a butterfly on cork. The second crack came from the bank. I'd called to confirm mortgage details, a logical attempt to ground myself. "Primary contact is still you, Miss Robinette, but there was a request last week to change it to Lindsay Carson. Verification is pending." Documents in progress for what had always been marketed to me as family support. The third crack was the quiet theft. Checking my account, I saw it immediately. $2,400 gone, transferred to Lindsay's emergency Visa card, a card I'd bailed out once before. I texted her. Me, "Did you use my card again?" Lindsay, "Don't make it a thing, Susan. Kids needed shoes. We're still sharing, right?" Me, "No, we weren't." No reply. My mother chimed in instead. "Honey, Lindsay's going through so much. She'll pay you back. Let's not start a war over a few dollars." A few dollars? It was never really about money. It was about being valued. When Lindsay needed something, it was urgent. When I did, it was inconvenient. The family group chat had been renamed Family Circle. A meme appeared, a man handing over his wallet, captioned, "Big sponsor energy." A cousin tagged me. Another joked about loans. My dad added, "Only if you name your next cat after the bank. Gotta keep the donor happy." I left the chat. They added me back. I left again. This time, I blocked them all. Petty? Maybe. But sometimes pettiness is just practice for boundaries. A week later, While mowing the backyard I'd kept tidy for summers, I paused for water. Through the open kitchen window, I overheard my mother and Lindsay. "Did you see her face when Aunt Karen asked about the deed?" Lindsay laughed. "It's nearly done," my mother said, almost giddy. "Once the paperwork clears, what can she say? She insisted on putting the mortgage in her name, her problem." Lindsay added, "Honestly, it's better this way. She's always been distant, a guest with a wallet." And then my mother said the line that lodged in my chest like a shard. "She's not family anymore. She's a sponsor." I didn't react. I just stood there, condensation from the hose dripping on my hands, feeling everything inside me cool into something sharp, precise. Their definition, not mine. Their words, not mine. When the message arrived that morning, locks changed, gate code updated, and distrust declared. It didn't break me. It just confirmed a boundary I had already drawn. Subscribe for more stories like this.
I spent the next few days in a quiet kind of vigilance, the kind that comes after you've removed yourself from a storm and are just waiting to see which way the wind blows next. My apartment felt different now, like it belonged to me in a way it hadn't before. Even the walls seemed to breathe a little easier, free from the weight of family expectations and the constant hum of obligation. And then it happened. An envelope slipped under my door. No return address, my name printed in neat, unfamiliar script. I didn't hesitate. I picked it up, felt the weight of the paper in my hands, the stiffness of someone trying to make things look formal, celebratory even. Inside was a glossy invitation, trimmed in gold and embossed with a quote that made me snort. "A house is not a home without family." The irony hit me like a punch in the chest. That was their mantra, the line my mother used to justify everything, every dollar, every expectation. Now it was printed in elegant calligraphy, meant to be charming, maybe even persuasive, but it didn't have the power it once did. Not anymore. Under the quote, in smaller letters, the invitation read, "Please join us in celebrating Elizabeth Carson's 60th birthday." I stared at it, letting the words sink in. My first instinct was to toss it, to ignore the entire thing. And yet, there was a part of me, a tiny, lingering piece of childhood curiosity that wanted to see what they had planned, to witness the performance that my life had funded without my permission. So I kept it, pinned it to my fridge above my spreadsheet printout, a juxtaposition of fantasy versus reality. One side, their version of family, the other, the ledger of my sacrifices. And as I sipped my coffee that morning, the spreadsheet glaring back at me, I felt a quiet, feral satisfaction. I had the receipts, the proof, and the clarity that I had been denied for years. The week leading up to the party passed in an unusual calm. No texts, no calls, no veiled threats or guilt trips. It was almost eerie, the kind of silence that feels ceremonial. I spent my evenings double-checking every number, every transaction. Mortgage payments, property taxes, roof repairs, the new water heater, groceries, daycare, internet bills, emergency expenses, every single cent, meticulously documented. I even backed up old messages and voice notes, a record of everything I had endured, every emergency Lindsay had manufactured, and every dismissive comment my mother had made when I expressed fatigue or frustration. One recording I had accidentally captured weeks ago still gave me chills when I listened to. My mother's voice, low and definitive, saying, "She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor." Subscribe for more stories like this. By Friday, everything was ready. Spreadsheet printed, messages and receipts backed up, USB drive prepared. I felt strangely calm, the kind of peace that only comes after you've built a wall around yourself and decided no one else gets the key. When the day of the party arrived, I left my apartment intentionally late, 10 minutes past the scheduled start, a subtle way of asserting that my time was mine, not theirs. The hall was exactly what I expected, rented, over-decorated, green and gold banners stretched across the walls, champagne glasses clinking politely. The crowd's chatter softened as I entered. A few hesitant smiles thrown my way, unsure if I had a place in this carefully orchestrated scene. Lindsay's eyes widened for a fraction of a second, just enough for me to notice, before she looked away, as though I were a ghost she had hoped would never appear. I didn't greet anyone. I didn't even smile. I found a seat near the back and waited. The slideshow started. Childhood photos, vacations, weddings, narrated in my mother's sing-song voice. And then it appeared. A picture of the house. The same house I had been paying for, maintained, repaired, kept alive. My stomach tightened, the old familiar ache threatening to rise. Applause broke out from the crowd. Built with love, my mother's voice said, and passed down with purpose. Then Lindsay took the mic. Her voice, smooth and polished, filled the hall. "This home," she said, "represents sacrifice, strength, and what it means to be a family. We've worked so hard to keep it." Worked? The word twisted inside me. I almost laughed. Applause followed. My mother dabbed at her eyes, a practiced, emotional gesture, while the crowd nodded along, completely unaware of the real story, the truth that lived in my spreadsheet and my bank statements. I felt my pulse in my palms, the right hands again. I stood slowly, deliberately. The moment hung in the air, heavy with expectation. Silence that previously had been grace now felt like consent. I walked to the mic, the room shifting around me as forks clinked and whispers rippled through the tables. "I wasn't planning to say anything tonight," I began, voice even and calm. "But since we're talking about legacy, let's discuss the cost of it." I reached into my bag and pulled out the USB drive. "Could someone help me plug this in?" I asked sweetly. A cousin, confused but curious, obliged. The first audio file played. My mother's voice, unmistakable, filled the room. She's not family anymore. She's just a sponsor. A few people gasped. Someone dropped a glass. I didn't look at my mother. I clicked to the next file. A screenshot of the family chat projected 10 feet tall. The meme of the man handing over his wallet. Comments mocking me. My father's joke. Then the final slide. The spreadsheet. Line after line. Totals highlighted, the full cost of my silent labor. "This," I said softly, "is the cost of your legacy. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every so-called emergency, 4 years of paying for a house you claimed was yours. If the house belongs to Lindsay now, this isn't a gift, it's a transaction. And here's the bill." Lindsay jumped to her feet, face red. "Are you serious right now?" "Dead serious." My father froze. "You don't come here and embarrass your mother on her birthday." "You want to talk about embarrassment, Dad? How about the loan application you filled out using my name and credit score without telling me? Because I have that paperwork too." He went pale, speechless. My mother's voice cracked, trembling. "It was a gift, Susan. Families help each other." "No, Mom. Families thank each other. Families respect each other. Gifts come with gratitude, not deceit." The room grew heavy with silence, thick enough to swallow sound. That's when the final surprise arrived. The doors opened, slow and deliberate. My grandfather walked in, cane in hand. The crowd instinctively parted. Without a word, he took the mic. "You raised a thief," he said quietly to my mother, "a coward to my father." Then he turned to me. "Susan, I read your message. You were right to stand up for yourself." He paused, then added, "Last week, I changed the trust. Lindsay's name is gone. The property, the accounts, they're yours now." The room erupted in whispers. Lindsay's jaw dropped. My mother's face cycled through pale, red, and pale again. Grandpa turned back to them. "You wanted legacy? Then earn it." He handed the mic back to me. I placed my stack of spreadsheets on the gift table. "You changed the locks," I said softly, "but I already changed my future." And I left. No cake, no toasts, no apologies, just the sound of chairs scraping and 100 eyes watching the one person they had underestimated. Subscribe for more stories like this.
I walked out of that hall and into the crisp evening air, the city lights stretching out like tiny promises of a life I had finally earned for myself. I didn't look back. There was no satisfaction in gloating, no pleasure in seeing them shocked or defeated. What I felt was simple, almost frightening in its clarity: freedom. For years, I had been trapped in invisible chains, forced to finance a life that wasn't mine, silently enduring the manipulation and lies. But tonight, I had drawn the line. Tonight, I had reclaimed my dignity and my name. The next few days were strange. Phone calls came, some from distant relatives, some from old family friends. They wanted explanations, apologies, reconciliation. But I answered none of them. Instead, I took time to breathe, to sit quietly in my apartment and marvel at the fact that I no longer owed anyone anything. Not emotionally, not financially. And then came the unexpected. People who had once ignored me started reaching out. Cousins who never cared now asked if I was okay. Neighbors and colleagues, long aware of my sacrifices but never acknowledging them, suddenly treated me with respect. It wasn't flattery or pity. It was recognition. For the first time, I felt seen. I also discovered something more important. I had learned the hard way how to value myself. No spreadsheet, no proof, no confrontation could ever replace that inner truth. I realized that life isn't about what others owe you. It's about what you claim for yourself. Weeks passed, and slowly the dust settled. Lindsay never spoke to me again. My parents? They tried to reach me, but I had already decided the bridge was burned. The only contact I maintained was with my grandfather. He became my quiet guide, a mentor of sorts, reminding me that integrity and patience often carry a power louder than anger or revenge. One evening I sat on my balcony, sipping tea and scrolling through my phone. I came across an old photo of the family house, golden and glowing in the sunset, the very house I had maintained for years. I smiled faintly. It was no longer a symbol of sacrifice or manipulation. Now it was a symbol of victory, proof that I had stood my ground and won, not through vengeance, but through clarity, evidence, and self-respect. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had stayed silent, if I had let their lies continue. But I don't dwell on that life anymore. Because freedom isn't just about leaving. They could never take it from me once I decided it was mine. And in that freedom, I found something even more valuable: peace. No longer haunted by obligations, manipulations, or false gratitude, I could finally focus on the life I wanted, the career I deserved, the dreams I had deferred for years. The spreadsheets, the receipts, the recordings, they now sit in a drawer, a reminder of the battle, but not the war. The war is over. And as I closed my eyes that night, I understood the final lesson. You can't control others, but you can reclaim your story, and that alone is power. The story doesn't end with apologies or reconciliations. It ends with me, whole, respected, and finally free.